Thank you. It's very good to be here. All that stuff professionally that I've done, which sounds awesome, like national security litigation, things like that, it is nothing compared to parenting and technology. So I go to work and it's like, oh, I'm at work. This is so easy, you know? This is hard stuff. And I think that if you're like me, that presentation is a little bit overwhelming. These topics are a little bit overwhelming. I'm very much not an expert in these areas. Today, we were on the boat ride in downtown Chicago. It was gorgeous, it was sunny, life was good, you know, the kids are at home, and I got a text that raised some concerning things about one of my kids. So, you know, this is our life. This is hard, right? This is hard stuff. My goal tonight is to give you, I think, some hope. We're going through a crazy time. I don't know if anybody caught it. A couple days ago in the New York Times, the general counsel for the NSA talked about what the effect of technology is on warfare. And he was sort of a canary in the coal mine talking about, imagine the Industrial Revolution happening in a few years, and that's going to be the impact in, you know, warfare on digital technology. I think we're living through the same thing with our kids. I really do. I think that's what the data is showing. But I think a lot of us think about this as a crisis with the children, right? What's wrong with the kids? What's wrong with the kids? I would flip it. I think actually it might actually be a breakdown in parenting. We give them the devices. You know, they're kids. We give them these devices. So I think we have to step up as parents. I think we have to engage. And tonight, though, and I know that may sound overwhelming too, but I think tonight I can give you, I hope, a couple of ways to do that that maybe aren't so overwhelming. What we're going to do is talk about, I'm just going to give you a gloss on Neil's presentation, the challenges that he identified. I'm also going to go through some stories from my own experience. And then lastly, just give you a few tools that you can take home and use in your life. Challenges. I work for the federal government. The agency that I work for, we are the largest investigator of child pornography offenses in the world. What I will tell you that Neil said about porn is absolutely true. Yeah, it sounds like it's, you know, at first people think, oh, it's just a normal juvenile thing, this is what they do. It gets worse. Every single case where we send somebody to jail for child pornography, it started with somebody doing something, you know, maybe less egregious, and evolves. They get that addiction, they want more, it gets sicker, and next thing you know, they're looking at stuff that we all shudder about, right? But that happens. One of the things to know about the internet, it is not designed as a place for children to be safe. It's just not. The internet was designed to connect us all. And that's great when we have good intentions and it's our family and it's our friends. But guess what? It also connects us with child predators. It's a problem, right? We now have a porn store in our home with bad men that are seeking out our children and want to do bad things to them in our home. So that's a big gloss that I think is an important gloss. And that's a challenge for parents because it's hard. These devices, they're not designed to be easy with kids. You know, the iPhone comes out of the box, unfiltered, you can get anything on it, you gotta turn on the parental controls, but even when you turn them on, you still gotta set them up right or the stuff's getting through. So the technology is just not designed in a way that is keeping our kids safe. That's an important gloss. I think the more I've done these presentations, the more I've thought about this stuff, I realize, oh, wait a second. It seems like we're fighting an uphill battle. We are, as parents, we are. This stuff is not designed for our kids. Second gloss, I want to delve a little bit more deeper on this because I think this is a very, very important point. By virtue of our existence, we all possess something extremely valuable, right? It's our attention. It's our attention. Facebook wants it, Snapchat wants it, Instagram wants it, they all want it. Why? Because your time equals their money. Every single time you pull up Facebook, it's more advertising revenue in their pocket. I think it's very, very important to realize as parents that these are not just devices that are neutral. They're a tool, they can be used for the good, but they're not neutral because they're not being designed in a neutral way. They are being designed to take up more and more of your time. And you don't have to take it from me.
You know, if the thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them to really understand it, that thought process was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. And that means that we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content, and that's going to get you, more likes and comments. I mean, it's a social validation feedback loop that it's like it's exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. And I think that the inventors, creators, and it's me, it's Mark, it's the Kevin Systrom at Instagram, it's all of these people, understood this consciously, and we did it anyway.
Yeah, I was a trial lawyer for a little bit, and we did it anyways, right? We knew it was bad, and we did it anyways. These are some of the best minds in our society, and what they're dedicated to doing is sucking up more and more of our time and more of our kids' time. So I really think as parents, we have to go in this with eyes wide open. You can look at the revenue, and it's there. This is Facebook. Revenue is up. The interesting thing about Facebook's revenue is you can see the dark blue part in the middle. That's the mobile advertising revenue. So you can see their desktop advertising is pretty flat over time. But look at it explode with the mobile advertising. So what they figured out was like, okay, if we put Facebook on computers, we get some advertising revenue out of that. That's great. But we put it on this. People have it in the elevator. People have it everywhere. Boom. Same thing at Snapchat. Revenue is exploding. It's online advertising revenue. That is the way they make money. Yeah, they give you this service, but this is how they make their revenue. Snapchat is an interesting company. I'm not a fan of Snapchat. The company was founded by college kids that wanted to hide their sexting. This came out. There was a lawsuit between the founders. There was discovery. Emails came out. This is a quote from one of the founders. "I wish these photos I am sending this girl would just disappear." That was the thought that gave rise to Snapchat. So you have to remember where these companies are coming from. And again, they're targeting our kids, right? Fortnite. This is a Wall Street Journal article from a couple of months ago, and this is a quote from it. "Like with many video games, the more people play Fortnite, the more data is generated about what captivates players the most and what drives players to quit. The constant stream of information boosts the ability of game designers to use machine learning to amplify player engagement." Translated, they're figuring out what addicts your kids, and they're doing more of it. That's Fortnite. So I think if we go in with our eyes wide open, it's going to help us understand in a lot of ways. As Neil pointed out, this stuff is just not good for our kids. It's disastrous. You talk to educators. I live down the street from the University of Dallas. It's a wonderful school. I love it. It's grounded in the Western tradition. It changed my life. Fantastic place. Even there, you talk to the professors. They are seeing a change in the kids. They're seeing increases in anxiety, increases in depression. It's a scary, scary world of the technology. So let's talk about what we can do about it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it is all about your child's heart. It really is. Your kid is going to turn 18 someday. They're going to walk out the door, and you may filter the phone. They may not even have a phone. But the minute they walk out the door, they can go down to T-Mobile and get a phone. So you've got to win their heart. I know Pilar Caranti was here last spring, and she presented on this, and I totally agree with her. It is about winning your child's heart. You have got to convince them. Do they want to use technology well? With intentionality, with integrity, with purity? Or do they want this in their heart? That's the end game. So we've got to bear that in mind. All right, there's my family. I got Will the clown. He's the redhead at the bottom. So it's very hard to get a picture with him not making some face. Let me talk a little bit about what we've done in our family, so you can get a sense of where I'm coming from. First of all, the big question, right? When should I let my child have a phone? I'm not going to give you a date. I'm not going to say like junior year of high school. I do personally think that in an ideal world, we would probably around the junior year of high school start to introduce these things, teach the kid a little bit how to use it before they get out of the nest. This is the world they live in, and teach them some of the virtues that come, how to use a device with virtue, etc. Right? That's the ideal world. That is not what I have done. That's probably not what a lot of you have done. But I think it's worth thinking about because we're all kind of jumping in this together, right? We're all, oh, well, all the kids in 7th grade have phones, let's just give them phones. That's kind of the approach. I would encourage you as a community not to take that approach. I would encourage you to be more thoughtful, I think, about when you give them the phones. And I do think the answer to when you give a phone is when it's two-sided. One, when are they ready? Okay, well, what does that mean? Self-control is huge. If you don't have self-control, and what does that mean? What does it mean to have self-control? Are you living order, right? Are you cleaning your room? Are you doing your chores without giving your parents a hard time? Are your grades up? Self-control. If you're not doing those things, you're going to give them a supercomputer in their pocket? That's a big question, the self-control side of things. What are their relationships like? Their communication with their parents? Are they sociable? Guess what? These things have a very anti-socializing effect. So if you give a kid that's antisocial one of these, the problem's going to get worse. There's a calculus that's involved. What is their peer group like? I think that's an important thing. It's tough. I reckon it's tough on the kid, it's tough on the parent. If everybody in the 7th grade class has a phone, it's that's a tough thing. It's tough on the kid who doesn't have the phone, it's tough on the parents that are begged every day for the phone. There's a dynamic there. What is the peer group like? What is your son's relationship in that peer group? Is he a leader? Is he a follower? There's a calculus here of going on of when to give them a phone. That's, I think, one side of it. The other side of it is, are you ready? Because I know they beg you and they beg you and they beg you and they want that phone, and you finally give in and you give them a phone. Well, guess what? Your life did not just get easier. Maybe for a day or two. But then it's going to be, can I have Snapchat? Right? Or can I have Instagram? It always is escalating. So there's an element of, if you were going to give them a supercomputer, you've got to step up, and your time is going to have to be into monitoring this thing, making sure that they're using it well, making sure that you teach them how to use this with prudence and with all the virtues we're going to talk about in a second. When they're ready and when you're ready, that's the time. And it's important to think about this when you make that decision. All right, what kind of phone should I give them? The smartphone, I would say, if you're gonna do that, you've got to put in place a lot of safeguards. You can't just give your phone, like I said, the smartphone or the iPhone, the Galaxy, et cetera, out of the box. Because there's a number of things on this that are harmful to the kid. You've got to configure it correctly if you're gonna give it to them. Yes, I think you can, in good conscience, give your kid a smartphone. But I think if you're going to do that, you've got to take a lot of steps to make sure that that thing is locked down. My approach, what I did with the kids, we have iPhones. Yes, we give them iPhones, but it's like totally locked down. It's basically a dumb phone. I think to some extent, my son for example, is in a peer group of kids that all have these, and they all have from a very young grade. And so to some extent, I think it was an act of mercy to sort of give him a really, really, really dumbed down cell phone, right, that had all the devices, had everything shut down. It was really a phone with texting and with a phone. That's what it was, and a calculator and stuff. So that is, you can do it. You can do the smartphone, but you got to put in place the safeguards. Another option is a dumb phone. I think it's a good option. I think it's a great option. The dumb phone, I know Nokia, I think, is making one now without a browser. That's the important thing about the dumb phone. Because the dumb phone sounds great in theory. The one gotcha with the dumb phone is the browser. Does it have a browser on it? And the reason I say that's a gotcha, because if it has a browser on the dumb phone, you've got to make sure there's a way to filter that browser. And guess what? Some of the parental control companies that are out there are usually not making parental controls for the dumb phones. They're making them for the iPhones. So you've got to dumb phones are an option, but again, there's some caution that has to be exercised there. Okay, the apps. My own personal experience, we did do the phone. We dumbed it down. The iPhone dumbed it down, took everything off. Son asked for Snapchat, and the answer is no, for me. Why? Because Snapchat, there's just too much bad stuff out there. The more I've given these lectures, the more I've researched Snapchat, the company, what the software is, what's out there on it. There's porn out there. It's got features out there that are just, I cannot, in good conscience, put this in my child's hands. So that Snapchat, this is a Forbes article, you can go read some of it. There's another great site called Protect Young Eyes, which I'm gonna talk more about in a little bit. They have more information on Snapchat. For me, it was a no with Snapchat. It's also a no for Instagram. Same problem. The problem is that the apps are not made for kids, and the problem is that you cannot filter the porn out of Instagram. So once they're on Instagram, there it is. My son was upset by this at first, of course. He said it was, quote, the worst thing ever, I think was what he said. But a couple years later, he actually told me he appreciated it, and I got that like great parenting moment where he thanked me, you know? And I'm not alone. I've had friends that have had this exact same experience. One of my friends, he almost came to sort of chest to chest with his son over Snapchat. You know, the son was like, I want Snapchat. And they said no. Guess what? Son's going off to college, thanks him for not doing it. So I do think there is huge room, and it's necessary for us as parents to say no. We've got to draw a line somewhere. We've got to say we cannot give this to our children. For my son, I think that by taking away some of this stuff, he was forced to seek socialization in other avenues. And I'm super thankful that one of the big ones he sought was the Center for Studies run by Opus Dei that's down the street from my house, because he started hanging out with kids that were good kids. He had a lot of opportunities. He went to Mexico. He did service trips there. He went to Spain and taught English there. He's done wonderful things. And I have to question whether any of that would have happened if I had put Snapchat in his pocket as a freshman or sophomore in high school. All right, Google Images. A lesson learned on this: safe search is not effective. You got to turn it on, but you also have to know how it works, because the problem is, true story, son Googles Star Wars memes. Most, by the way, 40% of porn exposure in kids, they say, is innocent word searches and things like that. So it's not kids seeking out smut, it's kids seeking out innocent things. Star Wars memes, they want to laugh. What's a meme? It's where they have the Star Wars picture and it has the funny quotes on it and things. You can go home, make sure your safe search is on, and then Google Star Wars memes, and you'll see, at first, they're kind of funny, and then they get crude. And then there's a link to dirty Star Wars memes. This is with safe search on. So my sense on Google and Google Images and all this is that you can use it, but you've got that their filtering technology is not that effective. I actually delved down for this talk, like what are they doing to filter things? In the algorithms, the primary way that they filter things is by having adult content providers tag their stuff. So in other words, the fox is guarding the hen house, right? They're making it so that if you're a porn provider, you go into your site and you put in there, oh, this is porn, and that's one of the main things Google's using to filter out the stuff. It's just not trustworthy. So with Google Images, my approach is direct oversight if they're going to use it. I shut it out of my house, and I'll talk more about that in a second. If they're going to use it, direct oversight. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the virtues, because this is the heart of the matter, I think. There are certain things that we need to teach our kids to do with technology before they leave our house. Intentionality is a huge one. I'm a big fan of Cal Newport. He's a computer science professor at Georgetown. Super brilliant. I think this work, Digital Minimalism it's called, should be required reading for everybody. He is talking about the principle of intentionality. What does that mean? When you pick this up, it's a tool. You use it for a purpose. You don't just take this and let it go. You have a purpose for it, it fulfills that purpose, and then you put it down. That's using tech with intentionality. And Newport gets a lot more into the weeds of this. He is talking about re-examining what tools we let into our life. Because the thing about the tech is that every single little app that we have is a little bit useful to us. It adds utility to our life. And that's not where we see the problem. The problem is that when it adds up over time, all that tech use becomes problematic. So the problem is in the accumulation of all of those apps. He puts it well, he says, clutter is costly. Technological clutter is costly. So what he would say is, and I agree with technology, is we have got to ask ourselves a different question. It's not, is this useful? And for purposes of parenting, we have to teach our kids to ask a different question. It's not, is this useful? Because yes, every little application of technology is useful. That's not the problem. The problem is when you take all that technology together and the utility, overall impact is bad on us. Is this useful is not the question. The question is, is this a highly effective way to accomplish something that matters deeply to me? That's a different question. Is this a highly effective way to accomplish something that matters deeply to me? And the example, social media is a great example. Social media, people say, well, I use it because it helps me keep touch with my family and friends. And that is true. But is it really a highly effective way to keep touch with family and friends? They say average social media users use it for 38 minutes a day. Add that up, a couple hours a week. There's a lot of real connecting you could do with 3 hours a week, right? So is social media a highly effective way to connect? Same with the news. Well, I look at the news all the time because it keeps me in touch. Is it really a highly effective way to do that? They say with breaking news that it's often wrong. So it's actually better to get your news from a high-quality news source the next day in terms of just the truth of the information reported. There's just so much misreporting in that first burst of news that comes out. So is it better to really be on the Twitter feeds and getting all the news and checking it, or maybe read the Wall Street Journal? Intentionality with technology is huge, and we need to be teaching this to our kids before they leave our home. All right. Integrity. This is a big one, and Neil made this point. The kid needs to be online the same person he is in reality, right? There's no online persona that's different than how you are online. And you absolutely see this in the kids' text. You see that they are not the person that they want to be online. There is the banter, there is the negativity, there's all of that. It all happens. And I think it's just this sense of it's hard to be face-to-face, eye-to-eye with somebody and say something mean. But we're online. I don't have that. I don't have to worry about looking you in the eye. I can just call you a jerk. And we all see that in the comments and news articles and things like that. But it's true for the kids too. So this sense of integrity, this sense that our lives should be one across the board. The professional person that we are should be no different than the person that we are at home. There should be a fundamental unity to it. This is true with technology, and we need to make sure our kids are like that and call them out on it. Just anecdotes a way I do this is I have a software which I'll talk about in a little bit, which will send me alerts if something happens with a text message or something. And I've noticed that some of my friends, my son's friends, have dirty mouths, right? They're dropping the F-bomb and stuff like that. Well, I just say that to my son. I say, yeah, I saw that text stream. I was noticing that so-and-so was constantly dropping bombs, F-bombs. It starts the conversation, and you then can talk about the importance of integrity, the importance of him not doing that. I've told my son that his reputation, the family reputation, in some sense, it's online and it's real and it follows you. You've got to be the person. You've got to be the same person. You've got to be a good person online, just like you are in reality. Huge point. All right. Lastly, the fundamental purity. This is a great website. It's called Purity is Possible. It's run by a Harvard psychiatrist, and there's these great modules you can go watch, teach you about some of the virtues that are going to help you live purity. This is just a fundamental thing. Your son has got to want to be pure and pursue the virtue of purity, and this is a great site that can help them do it. On the other side, it's important. A speaker came to my son's high school and talked about the connection between human trafficking and pornography. Because everybody thinks about pornography as kind of a victimless thing, right? I just go to this site and I look at it and that's what we do, that's pornography. It's not victimless. That person on the screen is a real person and has a story. And guess what? A lot of times it's not a pretty story. It involves prostitution and human trafficking and a lot of the dark side of life. The boys at my son's school this really resonated with them because they want to be good men. They want to be good people. But if it seems like it's victimless and there's no big thing to it, then they're not as worried about it. But when they hear that, no, there's I'll give you a website you can go. It's called rescuefreedom.org. It has a great sort of short, clean clip you can show your kids about this connection. When they hear that changes the game for them. It drops that seed of doubt in the back of their head that, wow, maybe this isn't victimless. Maybe there is something more going on here. Pursuing purity. And lastly, in terms of the virtue side of this, it's important to remember this is a spiritual battle at the end of the day. The pornography thing, the difference between pornography in our day and the pornography now is that in our day, growing up, you had to seek it out. Now it comes and finds you. Now it comes into your house. That's a difference. I think that's a spiritual difference. I think that's a spiritual battle. I think the devil is trying to attack our children in this way. So we have got to pray about this stuff. And not just the the pornography side about it, the intentionality side of it, the integrity side of it, all of these virtues. Pray specifically for your kids to have these virtues. Pray that they may receive the graces, because we need those graces. Make sacrifices with these intentions in mind. And lastly, I think, turn to some of these saints. This is Francis, Benedict, and Bernard. These are saints that really struggled with purity and had brought this, are great models for us to turn to in prayer.